Hi, this is Amadeo, and this is Julia. We're 28 and 26-year-old, and about 4 weeks ago, we quit our corporate jobs in the USA, and we started full-time traveling. So if you want to know more about how and why we retired in our 20s, stay tuned, subscribe, because we're going to be posting videos with more information about this soon.
So this video, we'll be talking about our 2.5-week trip to Albania, which we just got back from about a week ago. We're going to talk about our itinerary, our recommendations, and give you some logistics info. We're going to also have a full breakdown of our costs of the entire trip in a different video. So if you want that, we're going to link that below. Other than that, let's dive into it. So first things first, a little bit on the logistics. So the currency in Albania is the lek. But being in Europe, it does accept euros in a lot of places. Especially the higher touristy places will accept euros, and the rate's about 100 lek to 1 euro, so it's pretty easy. But I would have some currency in Albanian currency on hand just for the places that don't want to accept euros. The other thing is that a lot of places will not accept cards. You'll be able to find some restaurants in touristy areas that accept it, but for the most part, even for hotels, they're going to ask for cash. So make sure you bring a lot of cash on hand that you can exchange so that you can avoid those high ATM fees. Tipping is not required in the country, but obviously, a 5 or 10% tip is very appreciated by the server. So if you like your server, you can definitely tip, but it's totally fine not to. In terms of phone and service, we used eSIMs, and we're going to have a couple-minute video linked below on how to navigate eSIMs and how to install them on your phone, but that's the easiest way, we think, to be able to use your phone. In terms of the safety of the country, we felt extremely safe at all times. There weren't people catcalling us. There weren't people hassling us. There weren't people trying to take advantage of us. It was probably one of the safest places I've felt in Europe, to be completely honest. And then in most touristy places, you'll be able to find people that speak English, probably a little less so relative to the other big touristy areas, but we were able to get around just fine without knowing any Albanian.
So the first day we landed at the Tirana airport, and instead of renting a car just yet, we took a 4 euro bus to the city, and that was late at night. The next day, we took a walking tour, which was super nice to learn more about the city and things to do. Then we did some grocery shopping. After lunch, we went to a 360-degree rooftop bar that was super nice to see the whole city and mountains of Tirana. And then we went to dinner, and unfortunately, we didn't check the reviews.
The reviews of the restaurant were 2 stars on Google with over 100 reviews.
We had awful reviews. Julia ended up getting food poisoning. She got sick, and that night was awful. I had to take her to the hospital, where she spent several hours. She got some attention, some liquids, IV. The silver lining was that it actually was free. So all they took was some passport information, but besides that, they just let us go. The next day, Julia was still feeling pretty bad, so she was just resting the whole day. So I just walked alone around the city. I went to the pharmacy, got her some stuff. On the 4th day, Julia was feeling a little better, but still couldn't go for an activity or anything, but she was feeling good enough that I felt comfortable leaving her in the apartment. So I went and booked an activity for a hike to Lake Bovila and Gamti Mountain, and that was super nice. We took some insane pictures, very nice views. On the 5th and last day, basically we just took a bus back to the airport where we rented the car, and we headed to Himare city.
And on the way there, we stopped in Vlora for lunch. So Vlora is a bigger city. It has more of a party vibe. It's probably a little bit more touristy, and it was a nice, beautiful city. But for us, we wanted something a little bit more off the beaten path. So that's why we chose to go to Himara. And we ended up going to Himara, and we were going to stay for 4 nights, but we ended up only doing 2 because it was pretty desolate. We went during low season, obviously the end of October, early November. There just wasn't a lot of people around. A lot of restaurants were closed. It was at night. It was kind of eerie. I wouldn't say scary, like somebody's gonna mug you, but like eerie as in it felt like there was a pandemic there or something. But I think that Himara would be an excellent location during high season, where it's just a little bit more alive, but not so crammed and touristy like Vlora or Semil. But we loved it. It was we grew to love the fact that it was low season, because we got to do Himara Castle completely alone, Jipe Beach completely alone, and that's a really cool experience to just be able to go to these super touristy places and have nobody else around. So like I said, we went to Himara Castle, which was super cool because there was no there were no signs anywhere that said you couldn't go in any room or climb on any building, so you could just kind of weave through these ruins of the castle, go wherever you want, and really explore, which we really loved. Another thing about Himara, though, is that it is like 7 to 10 degrees colder than the southern part of Albania, Semil. So If you are going late in October, November, you might want to think about that in terms of, what kind of activities you want to do. If you want to go swimming, maybe go further south. Some of the things we did in Hmara were a boat tour, which was only 25 euros per person. Again, I think that's a low season price, but it was awesome. We went to about 9 different places, got to go swimming a little bit, even though it was a little chilly, and it was a great time. We also from there spent the day in Durmi, which is kind of an older city that has Santorini-like vibes because all the buildings are white and there's a blue dome church and it's beautiful. There's a little hike up from the newer city down by the beach to the older city up in the mountains, which we did, and it was wonderful. We recommend doing that if you're in the Hmara area. Other than that, we did a lot of these little hikes off the beaten path to the hidden beaches. Our favorite one was to Mateus Beach and the old submarine bunker. That was awesome, and we highly recommend doing that little walk. You can find it by searching on Google. It's only about a mile hike, and it was one of the most beautiful beaches we saw. And then on our way to Casimel, we stopped at Porto Palermo Castle, which is also right by Hmara, and that was pretty cool too, and was about 3 euros to enter.
So we got to Xamil and we spent 5 nights there. We originally had 3 nights, but we ended up moving some hotel reservations around to spend more time in this coastal city. And with hindsight, it turned out to be a really good decision. So Xamil is a coastal city. It's more popular than Himare. So there were more restaurants open there. It was more alive. And because it was low season, a lot of the beach areas that you would usually have to pay for to access in high season, they were just free for us to enter. We did a lot of swimming, paddleboarding, kayaking. We also did snorkeling. And we could have also done jet skis, but that was like 120 euros per hour. So we just passed on that, but we saw some people doing it and it did look really fun. In Xamil, we also did a bunch of hikes along the coast to hidden beaches and viewpoints. That was fun because it felt like an adventure. A lot of the times these hiking trails are not in the maps, so we just had to figure our way around and ask people. Our favorite hidden beach was this one called Zarnate, where Julia and I might have done some skinny dipping.
Don't say that.
Why?
It's weird.
Who cares? One of our favorite hikes was to this monastery of St. George. We saw a bunch of goats there.
Maybe ghosts too. It was creepy.
The hike was fun. We actually wanted to do as well another trail to this cala, to this beach called Cala di Bunti, but we actually couldn't find our way there and we had to abort the mission. In Xamil, we also recommend that you go to the neighboring city, Saranda. I think it's 20 minutes north or so. In Saranda, you can walk on this main boulevard along the beach with a bunch of restaurants and coffee shops. We also did there a quick hike to a viewpoint where you can have a great view of the city and the coast. And something that we really recommend is driving to this castle called Calaja El Cursit, which translates to Leather Castle. It's very impressive in terms of views. The castle itself looks like a wedding venue, really.
Yeah, there's a restaurant there too, so you could go up there and have a drink or a coffee and enjoy the views.
So when we were leaving Sarande by car, there were a bunch of cut-off streets, so we had to improvise some alternate paths, and we actually got deep into some neighborhoods with very steep streets and very narrow streets. We almost got stuck there. I was very afraid that we were gonna scratch the car or worse.
Again, don't trust Google Maps because especially in areas that are less touristy and there's not a lot of input, there's just oftentimes incorrect data in Google Maps.
So that was a headache. But anyways, with a lot of patience and carefully, we were able to get out of the city and back to Xamil. In Xamil, we also recommend visiting the Butrind Archaeological Park, which is only like 10 euros per person. It's an old Roman city, so there's an amphitheater, you can see a lot of Roman ruins, and there's a beautiful castle that overlooks the city, and you can just hike around. It's really pretty. We also took a boat to Ali Pasha's castle.
The Communist Party actually demolished part of it to build their own stronghold. So the walls are a lot shorter than what they were back in the day, but it was really interesting to be somewhere. We had the castle all to ourselves, and it was a cool little private boat tour that we did right before entering Butrind.
And then lastly, something we didn't do, but I've heard a lot of people do, is taking a ferry to the Greek island Corfu.
We just didn't go because it was 15 euros a person each way, and we just thought that was kind of a lot for a day trip. And we had plenty to see in the area, so we just decided not to do it. So our next stop was Girocasta, and on our way there, we stopped at the Blue Eye because it's this tourist attraction between Saranda and Girocasta. And what it is it's this lake and swimming hole, but you can't actually swim there to preserve the nature. But it's this beautiful blue lake with a hike all the way around the lake that you can do. That's really pretty.
You can actually think of it as in Mexico a cenote, same concept.
Yeah. So it's really cool. It's about a 30-minute walk, or you can rent a little scooter for €5, but then you miss the prettiest part of the hike. So we'd recommend just walking around the lake. It's only a few miles. So we arrived at Girocasta and checked into an awesome little hotel. It was called Janney Apartments, and we thought it was the perfect location. So the only thing is that we had to walk very far uphill to get to the castle and the bazaar of Girocasta. So we liked the walk, but it is steep. So if you're not into that, I would maybe get a hotel on top of the mountain instead.
That was especially tough after a day of hiking or so. The last thing you want is have to do another little hike to get to your room.
Yeah. On the last day, we were like, is there anything else we want to do up here before we come down? Because we're not coming back up. Anyways. So what we really liked about Girocasta was a little bit less touristy, but it was still more alive. There were a lot of restaurants open, a lot more people walking around, so it was a really good mix for us. The Girocasta Castle was by far our favorite. It was huge. It was €4 to enter each, so not too bad. And the cool part about it is that they kind of let you wander all over the castle. So we were going downstairs into these pitch black tunnels and just with our phone light walking around, seeing the old prison cells, seeing the old bathrooms, and there's just no rules. So we had a lot of fun doing that kind of thing. I feel like in the US or in any more touristy area, they like rope off all the sections, but the main sections for you to walk by. But here, it was super cool.
It was very interesting being able to walk on the ramparts, on the walls.
Yeah.
Very dangerous, really, but there was no sign there. Just do it at your own risk.
Yeah, we were talking about that. We like that. Do it at your own risk. I feel like more places should be like that. If you fall, it's your problem. So, anyways, another really cool activity we did was the Cold War tunnels. So these were tunnels and bunkers built by the Communist Party during the Cold War when they were scared of actually Russia bombing them, which never ended up happening, but. It was really interesting to see the history there and the power the Communist Party had. They were storing 3 months of food while the rest of the country was starving. So it's just really interesting history.
In fact, besides these Cold War tunnels, this one dictator or president of Albania at this point, he was so paranoid about other countries attacking him that he ordered to build 750,000 bunkers across all Albania. Obviously, they didn't build as many, but you'll see a lot of these little bunkers.
There's thousands of them. Another thing that we did this hike to Ali Pasha Bridge, which it doesn't really say online, but it is more of a hike than you would imagine. So make sure you wear the proper clothes because I didn't, but we were still able to do it, even though I was in sandals carefully. But it was beautiful. Probably one of the prettiest viewpoints that we saw the entire trip. And then another thing that we did was go to a traditional Ottoman house, which is really cool. It's the traditional architecture. You can see how people lived hundreds of years ago. And then there's also an ethnographic museum, which we didn't do, but I've heard good things about it.
Next, we went to the city of Berat. It was very nice, but honestly the same vibes as Girocasta. I'd say just even less things to do than Girocasta. We spent there 3 nights, but we actually had 4 at the beginning. So some things to do around Berat. There's this Gorica Bridge and Gorica Town. They're pretty nice. Berat also has its old town by the castle that it's worth walking around.
Berat is called the City of 1,000 Windows because it has this beautiful old town where there's all the buildings are similar colors like white neutrals, and it's beautiful at night. It's beautiful at sunset, and it's just the most picturesque city that you can look at from the bridge.
Then something that you should really do in Berat is visit the castle. The castle itself is not anything special, but it has really, really wonderful views of the whole old town and Gorica and the mountains. So really recommend that one.
Yeah, and the difference between this castle and the one in Girocasta and the other ones we saw is that there was, restaurants and shops inside the castle. It's like its own city inside the castle. It's massive. So it's just a very different vibe than just an old castle sitting there that you're exploring.
And then in Berat, we also went into the Gorica town to find the start of this hiking trail. And the short version of it just leads you to some nice viewpoints of the castle and the city. But we actually hiked a couple more hours to the neighboring town called Drobovnik. It's a very small town where there was a bunch of goats and chickens and donkeys just walking around. There was one restaurant, and obviously we ate there just to take a break, and it was wonderful. We ate really well.
And then the last thing we did is there happened to be this wine festival in town called Wine and Stories of Berat, and obviously I'm a wine fanatic, so it was super fun. There were 33 different vendors there and like 200 something different labels, and you could go around and sample from every single vendor. By the end of the night, we were so tipsy. We had, I don't know, well over 30 samples of wine. So our last stop was Kruhe, which is a little town about 30 minutes north from the Tirana airport. So this was our improvised last night because we cut Berat a little short. So it has the same vibe as Girocast and Berat, but it's a lot smaller of a city. But it's cool because it's perched in this mountain. So you just have these insane views. We stayed at this hotel that was only $30 a night that had, you know, these crazy views of the valley. So it was really pretty in that sense. But, you know, the castle, it was just, it's beautiful. It's super well preserved. It's very different from the ones we saw. But we were kind of, you know, it was the 9th castle we'd seen. So we were pretty tired by the end. The morning of going to the airport, we decided to hike Kruhe Mountain, because the day before we had done a lot of hiking in Berat, so we wanted to, you know, take a day off, and we decided to do it before going to the airport. And we didn't really know how long it would take us, but it was straight up the mountain. I mean, we did like 2,000 feet of elevation in a mile and a half or so. But it was beautiful. Probably the prettiest hike we did, because the entire way the views of Kruhe were just stunning. So we made it to the top and got back down in about 2 hours total. So we were able to make it to the airport on time. It was definitely a challenge, but definitely worth it. When we booked this trip to Albania, we really didn't know much about the country. We just wanted to explore that area a bit more, and honestly, it really changed our perspective of the country. It was very, very safe. It was probably the most beautiful country I've ever been in, and it was so welcoming. I mean, I think the biggest surprise and the most underrated thing about Albania is just how nice the people are. There in Albania, I mean, we didn't have any catcalling, even though I was walking around in a swimsuit. We didn't ever have anybody try to sell us something or take advantage of us as tourists at all. If anything, it was the opposite. So, you know, we had this problem with our tire in our car, and we kept needing to put air in it. And we stopped at 4 different places, and every single time they put air in our tire, I tried to give them a couple dollars for doing it. And they were like, no, I don't want your money. I don't want your money. No, this is just enjoy, have a good trip. And I mean, it was like that the entire time. Another thing is, on our way to the airport, we stopped at this cafe to get a coffee, and the guy came out and he's like, oh, sorry, we're closed. And my husband was like, just for a coffee? Can we come in? He's like, oh, yeah, I can make you a coffee. Come on in. And he made us a coffee, brought us bottled waters, and we're trying to pay him. And he's like, no, I don't want your money. No, it's just a coffee. Take it, you know. And these people obviously don't have a lot. I mean, their average salary, I think, is around 400 euros a month, something like that. So they just, you know, they're so generous and such good people, and we felt so insanely welcomed. All of our hotel hosts were so nice, and the thing I noticed too is when booking these hotels on Booking, there's so many homestays and hotels that have 9-point somethings, and I thought it was something was wrong because I'd never seen that kind of thing. But no, I think it's just that all the hosts are just so great. They're so welcoming, so kind, so accommodating that they get really good reviews. So yeah, I would say go to Albania before this changes, before it becomes more touristy, before it becomes more expensive, because it's a wonderful place to visit.
So that's it, guys. Hopefully you liked this video and found the tips helpful. This is actually our very first YouTube video, so feel free to support us by subscribing, liking the video, and definitely leave some comments if there's something we could do better or some things that you'd like to hear more about.
Thank you for watching.